Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Property Investment Australia podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Lachlan, Vidler, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Will Sanchez. Will, what's going on, mate?
How are we?
What is going on with this Zorro Three Musketeers moustache setup?
Oh, mate, I'm going to have to cop it. Yeah, I thought it was just going to be my wife.
Is it a career change? An 80s star, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, oh, that too. But my wife saw a photo the other day and she said, Will, you look really, really young and really good looking.
Yeah.
I said, okay, let me try and change it.
Yeah.
So that's why I came up with this.
I mean,
do you like it?
Look, I like it. I think. Are you gonna keep growing it out?
Nah.
No.
It's already bothering me.
Really?
I can't handle it.
How many days is that?
Good question. I don't know.
We're talking
a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
I reckon.
I can't handle it.
I reckon if you shave the stubble on the sides and you just have the mow, I reckon, mate.
Yeah?
It's,
True Aussie.
God,
True
all
Aussie.
the ladies of Sydney will be fearing you as they see you walking around the streets on a Saturday night, mate. It's
I wish Saturday night.
Well, mate, we got an awesome episode today. I think something that is very, very topical. I mean, look, really, it's been topical for years. And I know I've certainly tackled this topic in some different podcasts, but we're trying to bring a bit of a different spin to it today as well. But it's the idea that, buying in a rising market, is it smart or is it stupid? And I think that for me, when I was sitting down and having to think about what I thought could be something great for us to chat about today, in my head, what I was really thinking about was the fact that, since COVID, and everyone, and I always clarify this comment when we're talking about it, right? COVID didn't bring on the property boom. It just put a bit of a fuel below conditions that have been brewing for years and years.
Couldn't agree more.
When we did it, right? Sorry, not when we did it, when the market did it, right? And started moving up and talking, sort of holistically across Australia. We've seen that there's been a lot of markets all around that have just continued to grow and grow and grow. And it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. And I can think of plenty of examples, and we'll probably cover a few of them as we get through the episode today, of clients who, we might have shown a certain area to them a year or two ago, and they said no. And either we've kept buying during that period in that area, or we stopped and we're back into it. And they said no for no real strong reasons other than, they thought it was near the top, even though we showed them lots of evidence to say it wasn't. And they have missed out on so much performance it's not even funny, right? And it really comes back to that idea that people get worried in a rising market because they don't want to feel like they're bought at the top.
Yeah, I still can't get over the fact that you present something, they've hired your services for a reason, and they still say no. Like, what's the background to this?
Well, and I think, I will say, I have no problem when a client says no to a property or no to an area that we present to them, right? Fair enough. But the thing is that whenever that conversation happens, we always say to people, can you please explain to us why? If it's a property, it would be, can you please explain, in our reporting, what you don't agree with or what you think differently about or something like that? Or if it's an area, same thing. You've seen the area report, you've seen our analysis, you've seen our fundamentals analysis. Can you please talk to us about what it is that you're not agreeing with out of that? Mm-hmm. And I reckon literally 99 times out of 100, whatever their reasons are, they're based in emotion, they're not based in fact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah?
We've got a mutual client, and they said no to the first property you presented, and purely because I asked the question as well. I want to understand. I said, well, hang on a minute. What's your knowledge around saying no to this, right? They've done the analysis. And she said, we didn't like the property very much. I said, well, but you're not buying to live in it. You're buying for a return on investment, right? But anyway, that's a side topic, and I think it comes up regularly, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, today, I want to jump in. What I really want to unpack, for both of us to unpack, right, is why that fear of buying in a rising market is normal, and how, if you do have some of that fear, and fear makes it sound like a really strong word, maybe it's even just nervousness, but how, if you have that nervousness or fear, you can overcome it, right? And to also help you maybe shine a bit of a light on why you might have it, right? That's what I really want to unpack today.
Let's do it.
Should we jump in?
Yeah.
Well, I think from my point of view, the smartest place to start is probably just a little bit around the psychology of why people might have that nervousness or fear in a rising market, right? And I think it's quite simple.
Which is the biggest component, right?
Well, of course, it's all psychological, right?
Yeah.
It's all especially when you're being presented with the numbers and the facts, and yet you still believe that it might not be a good decision for you. And also, this isn't just about like what we experience with our clients at different times. This is also just about when you as an individual property investor might be going out by yourself and you can see all this evidence supporting a certain area or a certain property, but you say no. And that's despite what you feel like there is quite a bit of overwhelming information in the positive, but you're not sure, right? But for me, I think it's pretty simple, right? People, I don't actually know. We've done that psychological episode, right? But I don't know what the actual term would be, but there is, because it's not loss aversion, but that idea that, people don't want to not make money, right? And people also have this fear that if something has already happened, that it can't continue happening, right? But it's interesting because psychologically, we also do the opposite, right? So we're laughing about this outside, right? In the housing market, the fear is that if it's gone up, i.e. that thing, growth has already occurred, it can't keep happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you go into other circumstances and the same fear can happen, that the same thing can't keep happening, but also depending on your context in the scenario, some people believe it will keep happening, right? And I think that the casino is one of the best examples of it, right? So I'll use roulette as an example, right? Everyone knows roulette, right? You got the ball, it spins around, you got black, you got red, and you also do have green in there. But typically we think of it as black and red, right? And the idea being that, the simplest way to bet on roulette is it going to be a black number or is it going to be a red number, right? And it's close to...
Is it 50-50?
Well, it's not quite, but it's very close to, and most people just think of it as 50-50, right? But the idea being that when you go there and you look at the casino, you look at the table, there's actually a screen next to every single roulette table and it shows what the prior numbers have been, right? And it will show you so that, because some people will bet based on continuing the same, some people will bet based on the opposite. So you see that, right? Pattern, exactly right. Pattern recognition, right? Mm-hmm. Except what most people don't understand is that more or less, because it is 50-50 and it doesn't really matter even if it isn't, is that ultimately the past number, the past color, has no bearing on what the next one is. You can hypothetically have 1,000 reds. Mm-hmm. You can have it. And if you've had 1,000 reds, statistically, the next number is likely to be black based solely on the fact that there will be mean reversion, right? i.e. that you cannot keep hitting it. Mm-hmm. But there is nothing that physically stops another of the same color happening, right? And it's the same in property markets. And that's where it comes down to fundamentals, right? But psychologically, people don't want to feel as though they're not about to have their win because somebody else has already had it. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Oh, I love it.
What have you seen?
I just feel like going to the casino now. Jokes aside, I think it's a great analogy.
It's like 10 a.m. Do we need to have a chat? Do we need to have a chat?
Absolutely, 10 a.m., yeah.
Do we need to have a chat about some of your habits, mate?
I don't gamble, by the way. No, but I think it's a great analogy. The psychology plays a massive role in this. And I can vouch for this as well because losing money or not making money is a big thing, like for everyone. And especially depending on where you are in a journey, if you've lost money or if you haven't made money, you're like, oh my God, I want it so bad that you don't want to miss out. Yeah. So then it plays a big role as a component of your decision you're making. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's a big.
Well, I think that the other thing that really comes into it is that there's a whole lot of group thinking that goes on, right? People feel safety in numbers, right? Like I think back to being at school, right? If you're doing something bad, but your mates are all doing something bad, especially if you had a big enough group of mates as well. Maybe there's like 5 or 6 of you doing the wrong thing. You always felt that little bit safer, especially
everyone
because
gets stuffed together.
Well, or the opposite, and you're going, they can't get us all. They can't get us all, right? The safety in numbers, right? Mm-hmm. But if we take that to property, right? Often the biggest gains and the smartest money happens before anybody's talking about it, right? Often that's the case. So when that's happening, there's no groupthink going on. You might be standing out there on a bit of a ledge saying, oh, no, I think this market is doing really well, or whatever the circumstance might be. But then by the time, markets start moving and the media starts reporting on it, there's always this comment, and it does really annoy me, is that like people will say, once the media starts talking about it, it's too late, right? That's absolutely not true, right? Because I can think of lots of markets that the media was talking about 12 months ago or 24 months ago that are still performing exceptionally well. But I think the idea is that everybody wants to feel like they hit the winner before anybody else did, right? Yeah. And we're talking about a whole bunch of different things all at once. We're kind of mashing it together. It's probably maybe not the most structured part of our conversation, but because we were talking about groupthink, but everybody wants to be that person that's like,
he's the man.
Yeah, oh my God, can you believe that he picked that? Yeah. Like that's insane, right? And by the time it gets reported in the media, you can't be that man anymore, right? Or woman. Yeah. But when we take it back to groupthink and all the rest, a lot of investors feel comfortable knowing a lot of other people are investing, right? Because he goes, oh, well, if everyone else is investing here, it must be okay. Like market can't drop out, can't have, I'm probably not going to have a loss. It feels good, right? But that also means you're then buying probably in a rising market. And it's funny the contradictions that happen in the human psychology, right?
You're being average.
Exactly right. Yeah. But sometimes there's actually nothing wrong with that, because we'll get into it, right? If the fundamentals support it, it doesn't matter if every newspaper in the country on the front page has said, invest in this market, it's a good market. It doesn't matter. If the fundamentals support it, that's all that really matters, right? Yeah. And that's where we get into the fact that psychologically, we can be our own worst enemy. We can put ourselves in a position where we're making decisions based on emotion, not based on fact.
Yeah, but you and I have different way of seeing things and strategizing as well.
Yeah.
We look at the long-term strategy, right? It's never an overnight sort of approach. This is not how you do it in property, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got the long-term view and approach for things, then this is the area for you.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's interesting if you take a look at like for me, one really big example that comes to mind is probably the Brisbane as a whole property market.
It's coming.
No. I'm going back. I'm thinking like in that 2010s period, right? So where I want to go with this about buying in a rising market or safety in numbers or, like the idea as well of the fact that there's nothing wrong with buying in a rising market is a lot of people aren't educated or qualified enough to actually conduct market analysis to identify markets that are going to be moving, right? And I'm sure somebody will listen and say, it's not that complicated. And I actually agree, it isn't that complicated. But the thing is that most people have a lot of other things in their life that they're more concerned with rather than working out how to analyze the property market, right? And there is nothing wrong with that, right? Like there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what happens is that, if we're talking about the idea of buying in the rising market, when people don't understand how to do fundamentals and we actually flip it the other way and you go, well, you're buying in the flat market, that's a better idea because it means you're going to get more of a gain. When you don't know what you're doing, it can be really harmful. That's where I was going to take it with this Brisbane example, right? So Brisbane in the 2010s did a whole bunch of not much, right? And depending on when you bought, depends on how sad you are about that because your money was sitting dormant for so long. People who weren't properly analyzing the market, and I'll also be the first to say 15 years ago in 2010, the ability to have access to property market data was a lot different to what it is today, right? So that also plays into it for sure. But there were a lot of fundamentals that weren't really stacking up in Brisbane that we can look back on, especially in hindsight with potentially some more access to that data that didn't stack up, right? But people thought, especially people who weren't maybe the strongest at analyzing property markets, people thought, well, Brisbane hasn't grown for a while. I can jump in, better to jump in on that. Yeah. Rather than buying in a rising market, like Sydney had a couple of runs in that period. Other markets around like Tasmania had a bit of a run in that time period as well. I think pretty sure Melbourne had a bit of a run in that time period too. Perth had just come out of a run and now it was going into a bit of a trough. But, people looking around going, oh, well, I couldn't possibly buy maybe in a rising market. I got to go somewhere flat because I'm going to be the man. I'm going to pick it, right? And all that happened was some people's money sat dormant for 10 years. And what it came down to was that there was that lack of fundamental analysis going into it, right? Supply was starting to go through the roof, right? There was so many house and land package sites that were getting developed around there. We weren't really seeing supply constrained as much as it was. Demand was not necessarily as heated as it was in other places as well. And there's obviously a lot of things that underpin how I can say that, but it set itself up as a market not to invest in. But because of a fear of maybe buying in a rising market and also a bias towards, I want to be the man, I'm going to pick that, people lost out.
Yeah.
Now you think, imagine if you were 30 in 2010, and I picked that because that's when you start to make some decent money in your job, right? If you were 30 in 2010 and you went to go buy your first property, you were 40 before you really started to see any decent gains. But if you invested more smartly and potentially in a rising market, because fundamentally it was supported, by 40, you could have had a multi-million-dollar portfolio, right? And it comes back to that psychology.
At least double that value.
Well, exactly right. I would say in 10 years, especially with the way lending conditions were at that period of time as well, you probably could have built a $3-4 million portfolio.
Yeah.
If you're motivated.
WA wasn't even a part of the conversation back then.
No, it was diving. It was choking hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, for me, the buying in a rising market conversation, to me, I don't, you know what? I don't even like it. I don't even like it. I'll tell you why. The conversation shouldn't be buying in a rising market. The conversation should be buying into a market. It should just be that. Because it doesn't matter if it's rising or if it's falling or if it's flatlined.
Yeah, if you're supported by your fundamentals.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
You could have a market that's been falling for 6 months, but data also lags. You've got all these other things, or certain data lags, but other data doesn't. But emotionally, all you see is the news report saying, "Oh, median price is diving," or whatever metric some people might be looking at, just probably in terms of a basic level of analysis. But then you got your other data, and it's going, no, it's all right. It's just a little pocket, and then we're set up to keep going.
Yeah.
But again, a rising market could be about to go on its way down, but it's all about the fundamentals, right?
Yeah. Over time, if you're in it to win it, if you wait, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
If there's a small marginal correction at some point in time, and you're not just gonna jump out, it's gonna stack up, right?
But I think that's where it comes to, right? It's all about the fundamentals. It shouldn't be about buying in a rising market. It should just be buying in a market.
Buying, full stop.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's talk about smart and, I'm not even going to say it, reckless buying, right? So for me,
when you say reckless, you mean like let's do something for the sake of doing it?
Yeah. Or let's not do something based on just for the sake of it, kind of thing, or based on that emotion side. So, I mean, like most pros and cons lists, you can almost just write the opposite of each other, but I think we've tried to kind of think of it a little bit, more intelligently than that. But, to me, when we're talking about smart versus reckless buying in a rising market, right? Smart buying starts with fundamental analysis, right? Actually, no, that's not even true. I'm silly for saying that. I'm the silly one, right? Smart buying doesn't start with fundamental analysis. Smart buying starts with an analysis of your personal circumstance.
Oh, I like that.
You like that?
Rewind,
right?
Yeah.
And I know you're going to agree with me on this. The reason I start with that is because smart buying starts with is now, are you at a point in time right now where you could buy your next investment property? Because if that's the case, that's what you need to do, right? As long as it fits with your strategy.
I like that.
As long as it fits with your strategy, right? Like we talk a lot about portfolio planning and all the rest. But as long as that's the case, that's what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because best time is yesterday and the second best time is today. And the worst time's tomorrow. Right?
I like that.
You like that?
Yeah.
It gets thrown around a lot, but I think the simplicity of it's so true, right? Like that is what's most important. It's not about whether it's a rising market, a falling market, or something else, because there's always a market that presents good fundamentals. And it starts with your own personal circumstantial analysis of am I a we if you're, in a couple or something, are we in a position to buy our next one? Because if so, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Then we move on to market fundamental analysis, right? The smart buyers conduct that analysis, right? The smart buyers conduct the analysis. The smartest buyers get a professional to do that for them.
I like it. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is not to pitch Atlas. Everyone knows what I do. Plenty of people come and work with us. Plenty of people who listen to the podcast come work with us. The point is that, as I've said before, how are you going to be better and faster than a professional who does it 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, when you're doing it as a hobby in your spare time, right? So it's not like that's...
And these are the people you're going to be going against when you make an offer.
Right, exactly right.
Right.
So it's not to say that you can't do, like, that's what I'm saying. The smart buyers do the fundamental analysis. The smartest buyers get help, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're the smartest and you're getting help, right? Or everyone knows what I mean when I say that. When that analysis is presented to you, because you're already smart, you can then actually read what's going on and make an educated and informed decision about, does what that professional is telling me stack up? Because if it does, you've now outsourced all the time and effort, the data, the research. Like we spend literally hundreds of thousands a year on data and the analysis that goes along with that, right? Like, wouldn't you rather come and pay a fraction of that price, get access to it, have somebody provide a consolidated package, and because you're a smart, educated property investor, you then just get to provide the common sense check on it?
Yeah. There's a really good twist to looking at buyers agents at the moment, especially in the Sydney market. The property prices are rising so quickly that by the time you've tried to do it yourself, the property's already increased way, like maybe threefold what the buyer's agent fees. And I've come across this over the last 2 or 3 months, buying more so owner-occupier properties. I've seen people, they cannot find properties. There's no listings. There's nothing available. They make offers. They don't get accepted. By the time they've gone through like 20 inspections, and viewings and auctions, they go, I can't do this anymore. Well, when the property they started looking was 900. Now we're looking at 950 and above. So how much would have you would have paid back then, and how much would have saved you time? So that's what we're presenting to clients now, because if you don't use these professionals, it's hard. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah, and I think that really goes into that smart buying conversation, right? Because like for an owner occupier, really your biggest focus is finding a property that you love because you're going to live into it, and your second biggest focus is then going to be on price, right? But it's still the second biggest one. So really, if there's an arbitrage between getting in at a better price and yet paying somebody to help you with that, but making sure you lock your property down, you lock it earlier, and the value of that property is probably going to keep going up depending on where you live. That's an arbitrage, in my opinion, right? Yeah. And then on the investment side, it's about that's about the dollars and the cents, right? Like getting in, and it's funny. I had this conversation with a client the other day, right? We had a client who was a bit unhappy with us, right? And like that client, I personally don't really think it was justified. That they were a difficult person, right? We all know what it's like. They were a difficult person. We bent over backwards. We'd shown them multiple properties consistently, rejected, basically. And then basically the conversation turned to, why am I even using you guys, right? And I feel like people don't often talk about the bad conversations that we have, right? And, people know our results. I have no problem talking about a bad conversation because if anyone thinks that we don't have them, they'd be silly,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. And it's kind of you to share because it's good for people to understand that these things happen.
Yeah, it's like everyone. You go to an accountant. Yeah. How many times have we walked to an accountant? You're like, you know what? I don't know if you're the right accountant for me. I don't think you're a good fit. I don't feel like I got value, right? It doesn't matter whether it's justified or not. Every service provider has that conversation, right? Yeah. Anyway, this client, all the rejections of the properties was I can absolutely put my hand on my heart and say it was for nothing other than their own emotions, right? Because other clients snapped it up immediately. We had
the same property,
right? Yeah. At least one, but maybe two of those properties had bank vals coming in after we settled. After we exchanged on the property. For a good 30, 40 grand higher. And whilst that's not everything, my point is that like, it wasn't a bad deal to be had, right? And the client signed off on the market. So it was all about the property, right? But where I'm going with this is that for that client, when the conversation turned to why are we even using you? And they go, we could have just found these properties on our own, even though two of them were off market. So I'm not really sure how they were going to go do that since how busy people themselves. One of them was an on market property. What I said was, you're not just paying us to find you a property. You forget that we've just planned out your whole portfolio for you on our new portfolio modeling software, by the way, which I can talk about later, that we created from the first line of code. We created it all ourselves. We've done that for you. We have identified these markets and you are extremely happy with the markets that we've identified for you. And that takes lots of dollars to have the data to do it. It takes resources of people to conduct that analysis consistently every month, right? To then provide the updates. You are happy that we've shown you two off markets, which you probably weren't going to get yourself because you were too busy to go and build those relationships, right? And yet now you're framing the conversation like all we do is just find your property and you could have done it yourself, right? And this is where I always find it interesting because it's like, well, when people get angry, that's the first thing they think about is, oh, all you do is help us buy a property. But it's not, right? And it comes back to this conversation of buying in a rising market. We as a business and other people in our industry who do the same that are good at what they do, it's not just that. There is all the steps that come before, and then there are all the steps that come after we actually find you the property as well. And part of buying in a rising market is having the confidence and the data to support it, right? And that client was more than happy to be buying in a rising market based off our analysis. But that got forgotten along the way because they got very emotional about it. They got locked in their own head all about a single property, right? So that was...
Good point.
That was not a smart buy, right? And we solved it with them, and that was a few weeks ago, and we're now under contract on a property for them, right? A tough conversation.
Good stuff.
Expectation realignment, but anyway, smart investors. These are the things that they do, right? They do that individual analysis, they do that fundamental analysis. They're more than across it because for them, it doesn't matter that prices in that market might have moved by 80 grand or 100 grand or more or whatever it might be, because they can see and understand the underlying reasons on why it's happened, because then they can look back to go, well, that is still existing in this market. So that means that fundamentally we should be seeing a similar result driving forward, right? But that's a smart client. That's a smart investor, right?
I want to meet the client.
You know what I mean? And then we come to the reckless side, right? And there's probably not much that we need to say on that. But the reckless side is the people who aren't really doing that, right? They're the people that are relying on the emotion. They are the people that just chase the headlines without understanding why, right? And then they're the first people that then buy in a market that has been nationally headlined as buy here. And it is too late.
Yeah.
But they didn't do the analysis, fundamentals.
Thank you.
But they didn't do it. They then feel burned because they're like, oh my God, we were so stupid to buy in that market. But the reality is that on that list that they read, there were 10 other suburbs, and five of them that would have been fine to buy because the fundamentals were there. They just didn't know how to analyze that.
Yeah.
Right.
We come across lots of these people. Some of them want to do something.
Yeah.
Rather than making the right move, they just want to do something themselves.
Yeah.
And they forget or they don't understand the fundamentals, and they forget. No, they just go in and buy something out in whoop whoop or whatever, and then they think it's going to be a great thing. They did something.
Yeah. Well, I think that like it's something that we've talked about before. It's like people that feel like action for the sake of action is good. You know, the person's like, oh, I can borrow 300 grand or I can buy a property for 300 or 400 grand. I should just do that because that's better. That's kind of a bit of a side note to the buying in a rising market conversation. But yeah, it's the same thing, right? Lack of fundamentals. Then they suddenly buy it, then they feel scorned and they think, oh, property's not for me. The reality is they just made it. They made a bad area decision. They made a bad property decision because it wasn't supported by proper analysis, right?
Yep.
So buying in a rising market, you know, for me, the way that we think about it, as I've said, it's now probably the 10th time people are sick of hearing it. The conversation should just be buying in a market that either does or doesn't have fundamentals.
Yep.
Agnostic of what performance is going on there, right? So I got one more example before maybe we wrap it up. Nice and punchier episode. We'll do some longer ones. We'll do some punchy ones.
That's good, man, because this one's got lots of examples.
Well, I got another good example, right? So I have a client who's just come back around, signed back on. His partner has done 2 properties with us. He has done 1. So as a household, we're about to do their 4th, right?
Good on them.
Yeah, they're doing really well, you know? Like, and the thing is they're smart people, but they recognize that there is better and smarter and more efficient ways to do it. And I reckon if we went and added it up, they would have spent, off the 3 properties we've done for the household right now, they would have spent, I'm trying to do the maths on it, because they came on a bit earlier when our pricing was a bit cheaper. I reckon we're talking back when we were working at about 12 grand for a deal, 12, 24. It would be sub 40 grand for 3 properties, right?
Wow.
Sub 40 grand paid to us for 3 properties over time, right? It's been a little bit of time since the last one was done as well, but 40 grand or sub. And they would have made, oh God, I reckon easily 350, 400,000.
Yeah, not bad.
Right? 350 to 400,000 off a 40 grand investment.
Yeah.
Right?
Not bad at all.
Anyway, that's not the point of this. Where I'm going with this is he's just come back on, right? I really like him. And I don't know if he listens into these podcasts. If he does, he'll probably know who I'm talking. I hope he's recognized that he's the person I'm talking about. It's really interesting, right? When we did the first deal for him, his partner had done 2 already, right? And we did the first deal for him. And typically you'd think like he's almost a returning client, but he's not in that circumstance because he hasn't actually personally gone through it, but he lives with somebody who has, right? It's like almost a returning client. But it's really interesting, right? He's a really smart guy. Like I said, I really, really like working with him. And I know for him, it was a big deal to relinquish some control to let us help him, right? And when we were doing that deal for him, it would have been probably 18 months, 2 years ago, when we did that deal for him. When we did that, it took longer than he would have liked, right? It wasn't that long. It was maybe like 8 to 10 weeks, which is pretty normal. Like it's still pretty normal. But it was quite a heated time. But naturally, he started just to get a bit nervous. Like, you know, are they doing the right thing for me? What's going on? Like, we really want something. And his partner, gave me a few calls, just to,
Give you a heads up.
Yeah, like give me a little bit of a heads up. Oh, I hope I'm not putting her under the bus on that one. But like it was all done in good. It was all done in good spirits, right? It was just like hey, like we're all working together to help this guy out. Anyway, we got the deal done. Obviously, super happy. He's back to do his next one. But where I'm going with this is when he was coming on board with us, and this was literally like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about like markets we're going to go to for them, right? Or for him. Anyway. And brought up the fact that about 18 months ago, certain pockets of Adelaide, we said, hey, we'll go here, right? And he said no. And when that happened, talking about this whole thing, he said, no, price is going up. I don't really support it. I don't think that like it can keep going. I don't understand why it's going up in the first place. No, I'm not going to do it, right? And
so essentially, he said no to Adelaide.
He said no to Adelaide, right? All the pockets that we were in of Adelaide, right? And I said, and it was rooted in emotion, right? And I can say that because if he's listening, we were having this conversation, and that's where the full circle comes to. Is when we're then chatting about areas, I said, "Oh, mate, we're still doing some buying in Adelaide, some different pockets and things like that." And, he goes, and he brought it up to me. He goes, "You know what's really funny? 18 months ago, you told me pockets at Adelaide, and I told you no, and then I look at it now, and some of those markets are up 20-25%." Yeah. And I should have said yes, and I didn't listen, and that's 100% on me. And then when I said,
on him for saying
but then because then when I talked about some markets now, he said, "I trust you. Yes, we'll do it."
Go do it.
He said, "Look, obviously, I'll have a look at the." Actually, what he did say to me was, "When you send me the reports, the area reports, I'm not even going to read them because I trust you guys because of what you've done for the house, right?" And I said, "That's right. Have a read anyway." He goes, "Look, fine, I'll do that, but." I'm even going to trust you on some of the Adelaide stuff, right? So to me, that's a great story about buying in a rising market because some of those markets, they've been going up. They'd already done 20%, right? 25%. And he didn't feel good. And then he ate his humble pie. He ate his humble pie 18 months later because he knew that we supported it with fundamentals. He didn't. And he made a bad call. We bought a good property for him somewhere else, but he knew he made a bad call by not being open to that market.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's good. Good example.
So, mate, that is buying in a rising market.
Don't call it rising.
No, buying in a market.
That's it.
You got me. I love it. I set you up, spiked it up, and you've
scored a goal.
What do you call it in volleyball? It's not a goal, a point. So you score a point like tennis.
Yeah,
score a point. Yeah, there you go. Spiked it. Can't say scored a goal. Scored a point.
Scored a point. Yeah,
love it, mate. Well. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode around buying in a rising market. Very, very topical right now. And the overarching message from myself and Will is it's buying in a market. It's not buying in a rising market. It's all about your analysis.
Thank you, sir.
So, guys, if you're loving this, please keep dropping those 5-star reviews. Please keep sending us through the feedback. This episode actually came as feedback from somebody who emailed in to my Atlas info mailbox and mentioned the fact that they were struggling with how to maybe approach buying at the moment because it seems like everywhere's going up and they don't want to make a bad call, right? So this episode actually came from one of our listeners. So please jump in, drop us those 5-star reviews, drop us those questions or recommendations for episodes. We'd love to do that for you. But otherwise, if you're looking for help on the mortgage front, especially right now, we're probably looking at an interest rate drop next week when the Reserve Bank comes to make their decision. It is still probably a little bit up in the air whether they will or won't, but there's certainly data that strongly supports there might be an interest rate cut. We're going to see more as the year goes on. You want to be getting in now because markets are tight. They are rising, but you're buying because they're a market that's got good fundamentals, right? So go chat with Will and the team over at Aussie Newtown. You can find the details in the episode bio. And if you are looking for help on buying, building, scaling a portfolio, come and have a chat with myself and the team at Atlas Property Group. Excitingly, we've just launched a brand new updated portfolio modeling platform. So that's really exciting for people who are looking for absolute top-notch, excellent portfolio modeling side, all built from scratch by us. And you can, and also if you're looking for a portfolio review, that's the other side. atlaspropertygroup.com.au/portfolio review. We can look at your portfolio for you, or just come and book a general call. We can help you scale that portfolio. But otherwise, guys, until next time, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
This is a Piccolo podcast production.